We start off with Ricky Wassener. Ricky Wassener was already infamous, convicted of armed robbery and aggravated assault, and the central figure in Arizona's 2006 prison siege. But nearly 2 decades later, he allegedly unleashed a new wave of violence from behind bars. In April 2025, inside the Arizona State Prison Complex in Lewis, Wassener reportedly murdered 3 inmates over gang-related tensions, using a sharpened piece of metal as his weapon of choice. Saul Alvarez was the first, stabbed in the neck in the day room. Thorne Harnig came next, dragged from a table and executed in front of stunned witnesses. And when Donald Lashley tried to escape, he didn't get far. Wassener struck him down too. Covered in blood, Wassener remained eerily calm, showing no remorse. Now, already serving a life sentence, his future may hold the death penalty, as authorities weigh the charges and try to determine what to do. In March 2017, Joel Drain murdered a man inside a halfway house in Ohio. It was a brutal crime that would send him to prison, but not stop the violence. On April 15, 2019, Drain struck again, this time behind bars. He strangled fellow inmate Christopher Richardson using a torn bedsheet and a fan cord. There was no warning, no fight, just a quiet, calculated killing. Later, Joel admitted, "I enjoyed killing him." He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 28 to 48 more years in prison. After the killing, Joel legally transitioned to Victoria Drain, transferring to the Ohio Reformatory for Women. 2 lives lost, 1 identity changed, from killer to inmate to Victoria. Her story haunts the cell she walks today. Next up, Jonathan Michael Monk. In North Carolina's Pasquotank Correctional Institution, inmate Jonathan Michael Monk was already serving time for violent offenses. But on an October afternoon in 2017, Monk escalated from a dangerous to deadly. In a violent escape attempt, Monk and other inmates armed themselves with hammers and scissors, killing 4 staff members in the sewing plant: Victoria Darden, Justin Smith, Wendy Shannon, Jeffrey Howe, all murdered in cold blood during that chaos. The attack shook the prison system. It triggered policy reviews and national outrage. For his role, Jonathan Michael Monk was sentenced to death. 4 lives ended and 1 condemned in a single calculated uprising. Annabel Canales Jr. entered the Texas prison system serving time for aggravated robbery. But by 1997, his crimes had escalated far beyond theft. Inside the Telford unit on July 11th, Canales strangled his cellmate, Gary Dickerson, using a bedsheet as a deadly weapon. The murder was brutal and premeditated. Investigators uncovered signs of a calculated attack, not a spontaneous fight. The killing shocked prison officials. Dickerson was found lifeless in the cell they shared, his death silent and swift. For years, Canales denied intent, but the evidence told a different story. In 2003, he was sentenced to death for that murder. From robber to killer, Annabel Canales Jr.'s path through the Texas prison system ended on death row. Next up is Dylan Gage Compton. He was serving time in Texas for aggravated sexual assault, so he was already a violent offender at just 21 years old. But no one could predict the horror that would unfold inside the French Robertson unit. On July 16th of 2016, the prison's early morning calm was shattered. Correctional Officer Mari Johnson, a respected and dedicated veteran of the Texas Department of Justice, was found murdered near the unit's control room. She had been strangled, targeted in a brutal ambush. Investigators quickly turned to Compton. He had waited for the right moment, slipping past security barriers and ambushing Johnson in a premeditated attack. It was cold and personal. In 2021, a Texas jury sentenced Compton to death. Dylan Compton's case is now one of the few in Texas history where an inmate murdered a guard and was sentenced to die for it. And Mari Johnson's name lives on as a reminder of courage behind the wire. Next up, Mario Rentaria. He was no stranger to violence. Convicted of murder and multiple assaults, he entered California's prison system already marked as dangerous. But what happened inside Kern Valley State Prison on June 6, 2025 would cement his legacy as a catalyst of chaos. That morning under the scorching sun, Rentaria sparked a racially charged riot in the yard, a calculated, brutal ambush with improvised weapons, shanks, locks, etc. Screams echoed as a correctional officer scrambled to regain control. Multiple inmates died, many more were left critically injured. In the aftermath, Rentaria's life sentence was extended, and he was reclassified under California's most severe gang control restrictions. He was isolated, monitored, and silenced. Kern Valley still bears the scars of that day, and Mario Rentaria's name remains a warning. One man can turn a prison into a battlefield. Next on our list is Jarvis Jay Masters. He was sent to San Quentin for armed robbery, but it was a conspiracy charge in 1985 that would define his life. That year, Sergeant Hal Birchfield, a respected corrections officer, was fatally stabbed by inmates inside the prison's walls. Masters wasn't accused of wielding the weapon, but of sharpening it. A crude blade fashioned from metal and cloth, allegedly made by him in his cell. That single accusation, based on conflicting testimonies and circumstantial evidence, led to a death sentence. But Masters has always maintained his innocence. Over the decades, his case has drawn growing attention. Supporters include human rights activists, spiritual leaders, and even celebrities. Masters is now a practicing Buddhist and author who spent nearly 40 years on death row. Still, the state holds firm. The conspiracy charges stand. In the eyes of the law, Jarvis Masters is a convicted conspirator of murder. To others, he's a man fighting for redemption and justice. Robert Maudsley's crimes began in 1974 when he killed a man who had just abused children, earning a conviction for manslaughter. But that was just the beginning. While serving time, Maudsley launched a personal war against sex offenders inside prison walls. In 1977, he killed 2 fellow inmates in a single day, luring one into his cell and hunting down another. A year later, he murdered again, using a sharpened spoon to end the life of Bill Roberts, a convicted child molester. Some claim Maudsley ate part of the victim's brain, yuck, earning him the nickname Hannibal the Cannibal. But prison officials have long denied those allegations. Still, the brutality of his acts and his methodological targeting of pedophiles left a lasting mark. In 1983, Maudsley was placed in permanent solitary confinement, entombed in a specially built glass cell beneath Wakefield Prison. There he remained for over 40 years, Britain's real-life dark legend, isolated and unrepentant. Next up is Ambrose Harris. He was already infamous in New Jersey. In 1992, he kidnapped, raped, and murdered a 22-year-old art student, Kristen Huggins. Sentenced to death in 1994, his punishment was later commuted to life without parole after the state abolished the death penalty in 2007. But Harris's violence didn't stop there. In 1999, during a death row recreation break inside the prison, he launched a brutal assault on fellow inmate Robert Mudman Simon, a convicted cop killer. The confrontation turned deadly as Harris beat Simon to death. He later claimed it was self-defense. Prosecutors brought Harris to trial once again, this time for inmate murder, but he was acquitted. No additional time was added to his sentence. Ambrose Harris remained locked away under his original life term until his death in 2020. His name forever tied to brutality, both outside and inside prison walls. Next up is Thomas Silverstein. His legacy is etched in blood and concrete. Originally convicted of armed robbery in 1971, Silverstein was already serving time when he killed fellow inmate Robert Chappell in 1981 at the U.S. prison in Marion. But the most infamous moment came 2 years later. On October 22, 1983, during a transfer to the prison's control unit, Silverstein slipped free of his restraints with help from another inmate. What followed was one of the most notorious killings in U.S. prison history. Silverstein tracked down corrections officer Merrill Klutz and stabbed him more than 40 times. The killing stunned the federal prison system. Silverstein was handed another life sentence, but more than that, he was placed under no human contact status. For the next 36 years, he lived in total isolation, considered the most extreme solitary confinement ever. In 2019, he died, never again touching the outside world or another person. Next on our list is Henry Eugene Hodges. He was already on death row when he proved even prison walls couldn't contain his violence. Convicted in 1990 for a brutal murder during a robbery in Tennessee, Hodges was sent to Riverbend Maximum Security Institution. But just 2 years into his sentence, he struck again. In October 1992, he murdered his cellmate, Paul Skelton, using a towel and a sharpened object. He strangled and stabbed Skelton inside their shared cell. No warning, no chance of survival. The killing shocked staff, reinforcing Hodges' status as one of the prison's most dangerous inmates. Despite this second murder, Hodges' original death sentence remained. Over the years, his behavior only worsened. Today, he remains in Tennessee's death row, isolated, unstable, and a symbol of a system struggling with its most violent. Next up is Jonathan Guillory. He was already behind bars for multiple violent federal crimes when he made his next move. On December 6, 2021, Guillory and his co-defendant, Anthony Bell, turned their cell into a calculated kill zone. With a homemade shank in hand, Guillory launched a brutal attack, stabbing his cellmate multiple times in the throat. As the assault unfolded, Bell stood guard. The attack was premeditated, fast, silent, and deadly. The victim's identity remains sealed by federal authorities, but the message was loud and clear. Guillory was later convicted of second-degree murder and handed an extended sentence by the district court. Now his name is etched into the growing list of inmates who kill while already serving time, reminders of the deadly order hidden behind prison walls. Next up is Joseph Lee Druce. He was already serving a life sentence without parole for first-degree murder and assault in Massachusetts, but on August 23, 2003, he committed another crime, this time behind bars. Inside Sosa-Belansky Correctional Center in Lancaster, Druce carried out a calculated and brutal attack on John Gilman, a former Catholic priest convicted of sexually abusing minors. Druce jammed the cell door shut to prevent guards from entering. Then he strangled Gilman with his bare hands and stomped him to death. The act was both premeditated and vicious. He later admitted he saw Gilman as a prize and claimed he wanted to stop him from harming others again. The victim, John Gilman, was notorious. His abuse cases helped spark the Catholic Church sexual abuse scandal. In 2005, Druce was convicted of first-degree murder again. He received an additional life sentence to be served consecutively with the one he's already serving. Next up is Carl Panzram. He was serving a 25 years to life sentence in USP Leavenworth, Kansas, for a spree of burglary and murder, including arsons, rapes, robberies, and multiple killings. On June 20th, 1929, that violence reached behind prison walls. While working in the prison laundry, Panzram attacked the foreman, Robert G. Warnke, during their shift. The crime took place at the United States Penitentiary in Leavenworth, where Panzram was already gained a reputation for his hatred of humanity. Warnke, well respected among staff and inmates alike, became another tragic entry in Panzram's long list of victims. After the killing, Panzram stood trial, was sentenced to death, waived all appeals. On September 5, 1930, he was hanged at Leavenworth, unrepentant to the end. Next up on our list today is Bruce Duwe. He was already incarcerated for conspiracy to commit murder and aggravated manslaughter when his violence escalated behind bars. In 2022, at Bayside Prison in New Jersey, Duwe committed a chilling act, strangling fellow inmate Martin Sanchez and delivering blunt force trauma that proved fatal. Sanchez was tragically set to be released the very next day. The killing occurred in a secured area of the prison, and it was DNA evidence that ultimately tied Duwe to the crime. The victim, Martin Sanchez, had nearly completed his sentence, but instead became another casualty of prison violence. Following a thorough investigation and trial, Duwe was convicted and, in June 2025, received an additional life sentence, assuring he would never walk free again. Hey everybody, my name is John Lilly. I'm the host and owner of Binge True Crime. Appreciate you being with us today and making it this far into the video. We'd also appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button and the like button. That kind of lets us know that you're out there and that you want to see more of our content, which is very important to us. So thank you and have a good day.